Hello everyone, and welcome to this journey of reflection on how to deal with situations where we feel ignored or neglected by others, using the principles of Stoic philosophy. Today, we begin with one of the most common and difficult challenges faced in social relationships, the indifference of others. When someone ignores us, we can feel like our dignity is being questioned, our efforts are being wasted. But how can we deal with this situation so that it does not destroy our inner peace? The answer may lie precisely in the wisdom of the Stoics. The nature of indifference. The first thing we need to understand is that indifference is not an event that we should take personally. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, teach us that what happens in the external world is not within our control. What we can control, however, is our response to these events. According to Epictetus, it is not the things that happen that trouble us, but our attitude toward them. This reminds us that we cannot control the attitudes of others, but we can always choose how we respond to them. When someone ignores us, we often think that their behavior is a form of personal rejection. But the truth is that other people's behavior is influenced by external factors that have nothing to do with us. They may be busy, distracted, or even going through a difficult time in their lives. So, as Seneca said, it is not the pain, but our reaction to the pain that destroys us. Likewise, it is not the indifference of others that harms us, but how we react to it. Detachment as a Stoic practice. Detaching, in Stoic thought, does not mean indifference in the sense of a lack of empathy, but rather the ability to be unaffected by external factors. For the Stoics, true freedom is found in self-reliance and emotional independence. Marcus Aurelius, in the only diary he left us, wrote, "Do not let your mind be disturbed by what happens outside, for what happens is natural, and nature cannot be wrong." Learning not to accept the indifference of others is the first step to maintaining our inner peace. If others do not value us, it is not an attack on our humanity. It is simply a manifestation of their inner situation, which we should not interpret as a reflection of our worth. The power of awareness. The key to this Stoic approach is awareness. We must be aware of our thoughts and feelings. Whenever we feel ignored, it is helpful to pause and ask ourselves, why do I feel this way? We often find that we are looking for external approval or validation of our worth. In this case, the next step is to reflect on the true source of our worth. For Stoics, worth comes not from the approval of others, but from our moral conduct, from our commitment to reason and justice. So when someone ignores us, we can respond with a Stoic thought, it's none of my business. It's not up to me. I can only control how I react. And this awareness allows us to stay calm, not to be overwhelmed by the indifference of others. Part 2. Stop seeking approval. We have reached the second part of this journey in which we explore how to deal with the indifference of others according to the principles of Stoicism. In our journey of inner growth, one of the most harmful habits we can develop is that of constantly seeking the approval of others. But as Stoic philosophy teaches us, this behavior is not only a source of suffering, but is also completely out of our control. We must learn to free ourselves from the need to be recognized and approved by those around us. But how? Let's find out together. The illusion of the need for approval. Human beings, by nature, are social creatures and desire to belong to a group. This is a fundamental and natural need, but when this need for approval becomes central to our lives, it can turn into a trap. Our emotional well-being becomes dependent on the opinion of others, and every time we are ignored or do not receive the praise we expected, our serenity is undermined. In this context, Stoics like Epictetus invite us to reflect on a fundamental truth: do not seek that events happen as you wish, but desire that they happen as they happen, and your life will be peaceful. What does this mean for us? In essence, stopping seeking external approval means accepting that we cannot control what others think of us, but we can control how we react to those opinions. The value of not being dependent on others. Dependence on the judgment of others creates a vulnerability that Stoics seek to avoid. Instead of constantly seeking external validation, we must focus on our intrinsic value. This value does not depend on how others treat us, but on how we live according to the principles we believe to be right and virtuous. Seneca teaches us that it is easier to walk on a road than on a bumpy path, but the right path is the one we follow without being distracted by what others say about us. Stopping seeking approval doesn't mean becoming insensitive to others or ignoring their opinions, but recognizing that our happiness and value shouldn't depend on external factors. For Stoics, true inner strength is found in emotional self-sufficiency. If we focus on improving ourselves every day, without expecting approval from others, we will never be disappointed by those who ignore or criticize us. Freedom from the fear of judgment. When we stop constantly seeking approval from others, we free ourselves from a great fear, the fear of judgment. The fear of judgment from others is one of the most paralyzing emotions we can experience. We are afraid of being rejected, excluded, or judged negatively. But this fear arises from our distorted view of the world, where we think that our self-worth depends on the opinion of others. Stoic thinking helps us overcome this fear by inviting us to focus on what we can control, our behavior and our reactions. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics, wrote, "Happiness depends on how you react to events, not on how others see you." This reflection invites us to free ourselves from the prison of fear of judgment and to live according to our truth, without having to prove anything to anyone. Applying Stoic philosophy in everyday life. How can we apply this lesson in our daily lives? Whenever we feel ignored or unrecognized, we must take a step back and remind ourselves that our value does not depend on the response of others. We can also reflect, am I seeking approval from this person or am I living according to my principles? This question helps us rediscover our emotional independence and free our mind from the chains of dependence on the opinion of others. Another useful tool is the practice of mindfulness. Whenever we feel the desire to seek approval, we can stop and ask ourselves, why do I feel this way? What do I really need right now? Mindfulness allows us to recognize our tendency to seek external validation and redirect our energy towards building an authentic life based on our internal values. In this second part, we explored how to stop seeking approval from others, freeing ourselves from external dependence and focusing on our intrinsic value. I hope these reflections will be useful to you in facing the challenge of indifference and continuing to grow in Stoic practice. If you enjoyed this content, continue to follow us and reflect together on how to apply Stoic principles in daily life. Part 3: Keeping calm and not reacting impulsively. We have reached the third part of our journey to discover how to deal with the indifference of others through the lens of Stoic philosophy. In this section, we will focus on one of the most powerful aspects of Stoic thought, the ability to keep calm and not react impulsively, especially when we are ignored or neglected. The art of inner tranquility. The Stoics teach that our inner tranquility depends largely on our ability to not give in to immediate emotional reactions, but to act calmly and rationally. When we are ignored or rejected, our first reaction may be to get angry, frustrated, or want to respond defensively. However, Stoic philosophy invites us to step back and observe our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Epictetus, one of the leading Stoic philosophers, reminds us, it is not events that disturb a man, but the judgment he makes of them. In other words, we can't always control what others do or say, but we can always choose how to respond. The key to staying calm in difficult situations is our control over our reactions. The power of thinking before acting. When faced with indifference or rejection, our instinctive reaction is often to respond immediately, to defend our ego, or to try to get a response. However, the Stoics advise us to take a moment to think before acting. Marcus Aurelius, one of the wisest emperors and one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, wrote in his Meditations, "When you feel upset, try to stop and think, what advantage will you have if you react with anger or impatience?" This advice is an invitation to stop, to pause, and to remind ourselves that our impulsive reaction may only make the situation worse. Instead, we can choose to respond calmly and thoughtfully, acting on our principles, and not on momentary emotions. The importance of emotional awareness. Part of staying calm is developing emotional awareness. Whenever we feel ignored or rejected, it is essential to immediately recognize what we are feeling. It is completely normal to feel frustrated or sad, but what we must avoid is letting these emotions dominate us. When we are aware of our feelings, we can make a conscious choice about how to react. The Stoics do not seek to suppress emotions, but rather not to be slaves to them. Seneca teaches us that it is not nature that has made us fragile, but we ourselves who let ourselves be overwhelmed. Awareness allows us to not be overwhelmed by our emotional impulses, but to choose a more balanced and rational response. Training the Stoic mind. The Stoics encourage us to prepare our mind for everyday difficulties, so that when we are faced with stressful situations, we can remain calm. One of the most useful practices for training our mind is negative visualization, a technique that consists of imagining difficult scenarios before they happen. In this way, when the difficulty arises, we are already prepared to face it calmly. Imagine for a moment that you are ignored in an important situation. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, negative visualization helps you remember that it is not up to you how others behave. You can choose not to let the indifference of others upset you, but to react with serenity and maturity. The practice of calm in daily life. Keeping calm is not something we can only do in difficult situations, but it is a daily practice that we can cultivate. Every time we are faced with a small annoyance or an unexpected event, we can choose not to react immediately, but to take a moment to breathe and reflect. Over time, this practice becomes part of us, and helps us react with greater serenity even in the most difficult situations. Another useful exercise is to remind ourselves that the behavior of others is out of our control. If someone ignores us, we should not take it as a personal attack, but as a reflection of their circumstances or concerns. If we choose not to take it personally, we can maintain our balance and inner peace. Part 4. Turning your thoughts positive. Welcome to Part 4 of this journey of discovering how to deal with indifference from others through Stoic philosophy. In this section, we will explore a central theme of Stoic life, the ability to turn our thoughts into something positive, even when we are ignored or overlooked. The power of the Stoic mind. In Stoic thought, our mental attitude is everything. Seneca wrote, "Happiness does not depend on circumstances, but on how our thoughts interpret them." When someone ignores us or fails to give us the recognition we hope for, our natural tendency is to focus on the negative. However, Stoic philosophy invites us to change this perspective and see every difficulty as an opportunity to grow. A key lesson of the Stoics is that we cannot control what others do, but we can always choose how we react. If someone ignores us, instead of letting ourselves be overwhelmed by resentment, we can choose to focus on what we can learn from the situation. We can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this moment of indifference? How can I grow as a person from this? Every experience, even the most painful, contains a lesson we can learn. Shifting perspective. A central concept in Stoic philosophy is learning to accept. This means that we should not view other people's indifference as a personal offense. The Stoics teach us that people are often distracted by their own concerns and have nothing personal against us when they ignore us. For example, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When someone wrongs you, consider that it may not have been intentional, and that perhaps there was nothing wrong with their behavior." This shift in perspective can free us from the emotional pain caused by other people's indifference. Instead of seeing ignorance as rejection, we can see it as an opportunity to practice self-control and understanding. People have their own internal battles and motivations, which often have nothing to do with us. Detachment from expectations. Another key lesson from the Stoics is to detach ourselves from expectations of others. Often, when we feel ignored, our discomfort comes from the fact that we had expectations of how others should behave. The Stoics encourage us to free our minds from the need to seek approval from others. Do not expect others to treat you as you want to be treated, writes Epictetus. Do your duty and let others do theirs. Detachment from expectations does not mean that we should not treat others with respect and consideration, but that we should not depend on the behavior of others to make us feel satisfied. If we constantly expect others to give us attention or approval, we risk living a life in which our happiness depends on external factors that we cannot control. Gratitude as a daily practice. Another way to shift our thoughts toward the positive is to practice gratitude. Every day, we can do a small gratitude exercise, reflect on the things we are grateful for. This helps us maintain a balanced perspective and focus on the positive aspects of our lives, rather than moments of disappointment or frustration. The Stoics practiced a type of gratitude called positive visualization, which involves thinking about what we have, rather than what we lack. Imagine, for example, that you are having a difficult day, where you feel ignored or unappreciated. Instead of focusing on the feeling of rejection, you can choose to think about all the positive things you have in your life, your health, your abilities, your family, or the opportunities you have been given. This shift in perspective will help you maintain a positive attitude, regardless of the external situation. The importance of self-reliance. Another fundamental principle of Stoic thought is self-reliance. When we feel ignored or neglected, it may seem like we are missing out on something important. However, the Stoics teach us that true strength lies in emotional self-sufficiency. We do not have to seek approval or recognition from others to feel complete. Our happiness and value do not depend on what others think of us. In the Handbook of Epictetus, the philosopher writes, "If you want to be happy, stop asking others for what they cannot give you." This is an invitation to focus on our inner growth and our ability to live according to our principles, without depending on others to confirm our value. In this fourth part, we explored how we can turn our thoughts towards the positive even when we are ignored. Stoic philosophy teaches us to detach ourselves from expectations, to embrace gratitude, and to focus on our inner growth. Remember that our reaction to reality depends on our perceptions. If we can see every difficulty as an opportunity for growth, we will be able to face even the most difficult situations with serenity. If this content was helpful to you, I invite you to reflect on how to apply these principles in your daily life. Keep following us and explore the wisdom of Stoic philosophy together. Part 5: Acting on Your Values. Hello everyone, and welcome to the last part of our journey to discover how to deal with indifference from others according to Stoic thought. In this section, we will discuss the importance of acting on our values, rather than seeking approval from others. Being true to yourself. In today's fast-paced world, it is easy to be influenced by the opinions of others and constantly try to fit in with what others expect of us. But Stoic philosophy teaches us that our true strength lies in acting in accordance with our principles and values, regardless of other people's reactions. Epictetus said, "Never allow anyone else to become the measure of your happiness." When we act on our values, we do not need the approval of others to feel satisfied with our lives. Indifference or ignorance from others should not make us falter in our pursuit of living an authentic life. Instead, we should see these moments as opportunities to stand firm in our principles, not allowing the opinions of others to sway us from our path. Being true to ourselves gives us the inner freedom to live a life based on our own truth, not that of others. The strength to do what's right. The Stoics teach us that to live a virtuous life, we must focus on what is right, rather than what is convenient or popular. When someone ignores us, it can be easy to fall into the temptation to react with anger, resentment, or even revenge. However, acting according to our values means choosing the right response, even if it is not the easiest one. Seneca, in his Letter 41, states, "There is nothing greater than to maintain self-control, even in the face of indifference from others." This means that we can choose to respond calmly, kindly, or with understanding, rather than allowing ourselves to be overwhelmed by negative emotions. Acting rightly, according to our values, does not depend on the actions of others, but on our ability to remain true to what we believe is right. Self-determination and emotional control. In the context of other people's indifference, true freedom lies in recognizing that we can only control ourselves. We cannot force others to treat us as we wish, but we can choose how we respond. Stoic philosophy reminds us that we are responsible for our emotions and actions. We cannot allow the indifference of others to determine how we feel or act. Instead of trying to change others, we can focus on improving ourselves. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it." If we can focus on our values, we can act with determination and tranquility, regardless of how others behave. Acting without expectations. Finally, it is essential to remember that when we act according to our values, we should not do so with the expectation of getting something in return, whether from the approval of others or from any other external recognition. As the Stoics teach us, true virtue lies in acting rightly without worrying about the results. We act because it is right to do so, not because we hope that someone will notice or appreciate our behavior. Epictetus exhorts us, "Always do your duty, not for rewards, but because it is the right thing to do." This perspective allows us to live authentically, without being slaves to the opinions or approval of others. In conclusion, addressing indifference with Stoic philosophy means remaining firm in our values, responding calmly and decisively, and acting with integrity without expecting anything in return. The Stoics teach us that our happiness does not depend on the approval of others, but on our ability to live according to what is right. If this content was useful and inspired you, I invite you to reflect on how you can apply these principles in your daily life. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content on Stoic philosophy and personal development. We are here to grow together and face life's challenges with wisdom and serenity. Thanks for following this journey, and see you in the next video.